Welcome to the lighter side of the spectrum, the podcast that celebrates the multiple hats we wear and the juggling acts we perform in life. Whether you're parenting kids and teens on the autism spectrum, navigating the ever-evolving healthcare industry, or building a more inclusive and impactful world, this is your space to find connection, inspiration, and growth. Together, we'll share stories, tackle challenges, and explore how innovation and inclusion create better outcomes for everyone. Because no matter the spectrum, there's always a lighter side. Now here's your host, David Kaufer.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the lighter side of the spectrum. I'm your host, David Kaufer, and we are kicking off the new year with a special guest on today's episode. And this one's going to be extremely practical for parents and educators alike. Today, I'm joined by Karen Mayer Cunningham, aka the Special Education Boss. I love that. And her mission is simple and powerful: to train everyone who sits at the 504 IEP table to navigate and negotiate successful student outcomes. So we're going to talk about what families need to know before they walk into these meetings, how to avoid common traps, how to advocate without burning out. That's a big one. How to shift the conversation from compliance only and paperwork to real support and real progress for the student. And because we like to keep it a little fun and a little real, we're going to have our segments: autism, fact or fiction, maybe a tip of the week. So with all of that, Karen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David, for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Really looking forward to this. I know we've been in contact for a while, so I'm glad we're able to get it going. But for our listeners, why don't you tell us kind of the origin story? How did the special education boss emerge? What brought you into the space?
Baptism by fire. You know, nobody would choose to be a special education advocate. I had a child diagnosed with autism in the mid 90s when I still had a thyroid. And he was, one of my clients said, if you go in Texas, if you're speech delayed, you can start school. And I was like, this is great news. So I went and had him evaluated. He met eligibility and we sent him off to school. I sent him with the original Lion King backpack and I sent him to school because that's what they do. They take kids at school and they fix them. And, you know, I waved in the driveway and thought everything would be great. And about a month into starting school, when he was 3 in PPCD, preschool programs for children with disabilities, the teacher called Child Protective Services on us, which is not really a good way to start your relationship. And that's a podcast for another day. But we had a lovely, angry woman from Child Protective Services pounding on our door, asking us if we thought that was normal, that he rocked all day and chewed his fingers and didn't talk. And of course, we said, no. And she said, well, are you going to do anything about it? I said, well, we're sending him across the street to school to get help. She goes, well, that's what your husband said. Oh, well, good. We're on the same page. That's fantastic. And so I worked it out with my creator, sent him back. And lo and behold, if she didn't do it, another 4 months later. And at that point, my loveliness has worn off because I am very lovely. I'm German Irish, so I'm very laid back. Right. And I remember rolling my packet of papers, and all moms and dads know that packet of papers that we have in special ed. And I went to the Child Protective Services office like a lunatic. I don't recommend that. And I was like, I want to see my case manager. Of course, that's not your case manager. And we get into the office, and this girl, David, she might have been 22 years old in one day. Like she had just moved her tassel from the University of Texas. And I said, do you know anything about autism? And she goes, I think when I was a sophomore, we had a seminar. I was like, oh God, are you my leader? However,
oh my gosh,
he was the first person in that moment that had ever given me a resource. So how is it that the first person to give me a resource, and it was for MHMR, which is a public agency, we don't call it that anymore, but mental health, mental retardation, a state agency that's federally funded, and they had great resources. So why, after almost a year in the special ed process, is the first person helping me because a Child Protective Services was called? And so, I remember one of the other meetings in James's first year of IEP Meetings, the teacher had this little piece of paper and she folded it up and then she slid it over to me under my leg like we were doing something illegal. And I remember I got outside and I opened it and it was for Easter seals. And I thought, why is this a secret? Like, why can't we just this is America. We pay taxes. Like, is it me? Because it usually is me, David. And so that's why I just became, a bull in a China hutch. And I was like, if there was any way between me and Oprah and God to figure this out, we were going to do it. And so I just became obsessed with this amazing law, obsessed with these kiddos. And I just started bossing people around. I mean, helping people. And I was like, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go with you. And it sort of started to unfold. And I think we have this amazing law. We have these amazing kiddos. We have these amazing teachers. And my mission statement is when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. And so that it just evolved. Believe me, I was not planning on doing this. I was planning on being popular. And God said, no, I'd rather you be effective. And I said, no, really, I'm going for popular. And so now it's the most amazing thing that I ever get to do. And I always say that out of my greatest pain, God birthed my biggest calling.
That is amazing. And I can definitely relate on a couple of different levels. Like you said, it's not something you choose to do. We like to be popular. We like to be friendly. We want to be cooperative, right? Collaborative. And it's funny because that was my mindset as well. And my wife's, I think probably most, like you said, you get the diagnosis. Early intervention. Early intervention's good.
Yes.
We're going to send them to pre-K or whatever they call it, whatever the tie. And they're going to take care of it. They'll be in good hands. The system's in place. Yeah. And all you have to do is just be supportive.
That's it. Yeah. And they know everything that you need to know, and they will direct you in what is the best for your child. So this is fantastic.
Yeah. And then it's not. Then it's not.
Reality hits. Yeah. Yeah.
But gosh, how traumatic that would be to have Child Protective Services called on you for basically just having an autistic child, right? Like just because he was behaving.
And she was very lovely. At the end, she said after the shit at our house the first time, I'm also a stand-up comic. So on the phone, my husband goes, I'm not kidding, which is really how you should start a conversation with me. And at the very end, she said, I'm going to leave a brochure in case we take him into custody. What are you talking about?
Oh my gosh.
Welcome to special education. Yeah.
And that was obviously a really different era. You're kind of, autism obviously has been around for a long time, but those were kind of the early days of IEPs, of schools trying to figure it out of parent. There wasn't a lot of information or a lot of resources available for you. It was pre-internet even.
Yeah, it was the pre-internet, pre-interweb. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just assumed that, I assume that if I go to a car place, they specialize and have training in cars. I assume that I'm sitting at a table of special educators. They have special education training. And I love teachers. Probably 20% of my clients are teachers. 75% of the people I train are teachers.
Great.
And, they just send them in there and go, they bring them in a week ahead of school. They throw a bunch of stuff at them, and then they go Bobcats. And teachers want the training. But the school districts do not provide it. And I can tell you why. I'm pretty sure they don't provide it. But, most educators get their training in college, which is great. But that's not really what happens at an IEP meeting. It's not really what happens when, guess what? We may not disagree, right? Which is part of the human experience. And so, our most marginalized population in public schools are not appropriately supported because the districts don't appropriately support our number one champions, our teachers on the front lines.
That's very true. That's very true. Like I said, similar experience. The majority of the teachers we worked with were, nice, supportive. They wanted the best as far as they knew. It's kind of different. I don't know. Was your son, is he able to communicate? Not because my son, who's 20, is a non-speaker. So a lot of his issues were primarily driven by his inability to communicate.
Yeah. So my son, go ahead.
I'll just say, so that in turn kind of led to a presumption of a lack of intelligence, right? Like they didn't think he was capable of academic level work and things like that. So I wasn't sure if that was similar for you.
Yeah. So James was lost all of his language at 18 months, but he was partial verbal for a long time, but low verbal. He's completely recovered. He's a grown man. He's 31. He's a professional bowler on the PBA Southwest Regional Tour. So David, he's going to pay for all my plastic surgery one day. But,
That's awesome.
Yeah. So even then I would have gotten him an AAC device had I known about that. Right. And so, for parents with a child with a disability, we're just trying to get through Thursday. Right. And we just assume we go across the street and we are crushing it. And I remember the second meeting I had at the very end, I said, so if he, they do all this paperwork and they go, do you have any questions? Because it's so warm and fuzzy. And I said, yeah, I do have a question. If he eats anything in the room because he had severe pica, are you going to kick him out of school? And they just looked at me like I was crazy, and I am. And they said, no. I said, okay, no more questions. That's all. I just thought I went to school, if you did something wrong, you got in trouble, right? So I didn't know how this special ed thing worked. And I couldn't believe that they would take, quote unquote, my child for a day. I just thought that was great. And I just thought everything was going to work out. And it didn't very quickly. And I'm so grateful for that, because I know so many parents, and I'm sure you do, David, that just assume that progress is occurring and their child graduates. And that's not what's happened.
No, it's not, more times than not.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because it was kind of a realization I had. I'm in the process of kind of going back through old blog posts. I started blogging, our experience when Stone was about 3 or 4, right? Like, this is, hey, I'm going to share this. And I kind of went through, and there were a number of years I had kind of regular posts and updates, and then they just stopped.
Yeah.
And I realized that was the time when kind of everything stopped at school too. Like the progress, they had basically given up because of the standardized tests, right? This whole, like I said, lack of presumption of competence.
Right.
Basically, they had told me directly that he had intellectual disability, would have to be in the life skills path, and that's just kind of like, boom. I just felt like I had nothing more to say.
Yeah. I remember when James was first evaluated by an outside provider who was 2.5, another warm and fuzzy lady said, well, he's classically autistic. He's got 15 of the 16 markers. He'll never play with other children. He won't have any friends, have to live in an institution. Do you have any questions? Wow. That was a lot for a Tuesday morning, ma'am.
Right.
Reader, can we just
exactly. Kind of a shot.
Yeah. Wow. And, that is, for me, for communication, whatever kid I serve or anybody on the planet, our success in this world is very much, if not primarily, driven by our ability to communicate. And so, if you had, some sort of episode and you couldn't talk tomorrow, nobody would think you had an intellectual disability.
Right.
Because a little person can't talk, we assume they can't learn, right? And we have so many ways to augment that now. And we have so many, even now what I know about diagnostic testing, I have kids that are nonverbal. And so let's not give them the WJ4. Let's not give them the Westler. Let's not give them the Wyatt, which is language heavy. Why don't we give them the Lighter 3, which is a completely nonverbal test? And so
that's awesome. Yes.
So our testing drives outcomes, right? If I give you a test, so those tests are normed and standardized on kids that can see, speak, and hear.
And motor plan, I'll just add also.
So you can't do that. You don't have to give the test. I'll tell you what the result's going to be. Not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Can you talk to that? Because again, I think 95% of the parents, particularly if you're just beginning this journey, aren't aware of that as an option, that there are other tests that you can request.
Yeah.
Depending on the abilities of your child.
And so we, when we're asking for testing, and I go over it in my book, but in the evaluation process, there's 8 areas that we ask for in testing. And one is a cognitive profile to include all 7 G's. The G stands for gangster. It's your brain, how you acquire, keep, store, and retrieve information and process information. And then achievement. So, your cognition is kind of how you're cooked, right? That's how you got here. Your achievement is what I can produce, right? 2 things happen in a classroom, instruction and production. We're measuring production, right? Based upon what we know. And what we know is teaching the middle, right? And so for cognitive, there are 3 tests that we can give kiddos that are nonverbal. So we can give the Lighter 3, LEITER 3. We can give the unit, which sort of sounds like a prison, but I like it. And then in the olden days, we gave the Tony. And so when we give those, I had a kiddo that was I don't know, his IQ is in the 60th percentile, 60%, which is less than 1 percentile. And this amazing redheaded diagnostician, she goes, well, let me give him this other test, the lighter. And then his IQ was in the 60th percentile. It was all nonverbal. He graduated an advanced student. He just didn't yet, right? And so just because I don't talk to you, maybe I don't like you. Maybe I don't want to talk to you. Maybe I don't have the physical capacity to talk to you. Maybe a lot of things, right? Instead of we just check, box. And, when we evaluate kiddos that are little, like James or your son Stone, it's called an arena evaluation. And somebody that's from Texas, I'm thinking of a rodeo pin, right?
Right, that's what it sounds like. Yeah.
We have the 2.5-year that come in running around and some adults with a clipboard making decisions on his destiny or destruction by watching him running around a conference room. I call baloney on that. That is not a professional evaluation, right? And I sit in meetings, they go, we don't do that. And I say, we do. Yeah, we can't do that. You can. Yeah, well, we're not going to do that here. You are. And people don't know how to stick the landing, right? And there is this unholy alliance. It always has been and probably always will be the school said. Now, if your priest said that, your investor, your realtor, your banker, you wouldn't go, oh, okay. You would go, we're not doing that, honey. Let's go to the next place. But the school said, that's it. The conversation's over. And I am here to disrupt that ridiculousness. This is a human being. This is your seed. And we are going to do what's right for him in these, 3 to 22, so that the next 80 years, he continues to be amazing. And so what you'll never, ever, ever get back is time. And that little boy or that little girl is desperately wanting you to advocate for them. Our job is to stay in a conversation to talk about uncomfortable truths in a way that people keep listening. And we have to stay at the table. And we're all allergic to being uncomfortable. But if you took your kid in the emergency room, you would be Shirley MacLaine in terms of endearment. And we've got to be that. I am not trying to be the school's buddy. I'm trying to advocate in a business meeting for educating a student.
I love that so much. And man, I wish I knew you 10, 15 years ago. I was telling my wife actually about our conversation about the podcast and what you do and all that. And she said that, where was she when Stone was in kindergarten? Because that's just so valuable. You touched on it earlier. You talked about kind of we're just trying to get through Thursday, right?
Yeah.
That's so typical. It's survival mode for so many parents who are dealing with, young kids on the spectrum or who have other needs. This is just one more thing. And you want to be able to trust. But why do you think there is, like you said, just kind of, is this just societal that the school says? Has it developed such an authority position that people feel like that they can't challenge it? Or is it wishful thinking, combination?
I think that I always wonder about the why, but I tell people to focus on the what next, but I still wonder about the why. What I think it is that in schools, adults are their instructions are followed by the bulk of the people in the building.
Yep.
The ratio between adults and children. So just by their job, they're used to when they say something, people roll out, right? And so when you come into a school, you don't work there. You do not work there. You did not sign a contract. You didn't drink the Kool-Aid. We don't have matching t-shirts. And how dare you come in, David, you and your wife, and have questions? But more importantly, how dare you question what is occurring, right? And so, and the presumption of, I assume that if Bob is the math teacher, he is trained in math. I would assume if you are a self-contained behavior teacher, you have been trained in that, and you are assuming wrong.
Yeah.
We just are, right? And it is not the teacher's fault. It is not. I mean, we have this amazing little book that, I read at night because I like, to doze off. This is the federal code. I would do $100 if you can send me a picture of any principal. People go, where'd you get that? On the interweb. So there's a reason, David, that districts don't provide teachers that book. There's a reason, right? Because if you don't know, then you're just going to follow what I do. And special ed that's great is great, and special ed that's bad is a train wreck, right? And so we have really nice people who are being trained by somebody else in the teacher's lounge or at a seminar or professional development. And so my job is to talk about the law, which is linear. I remember I had this lady a couple weeks ago. She goes, Ms. Cunningham, she goes, I know the federal law says that, but I don't agree with it. Good news. You don't have to. It didn't ask you. The law is assumptive. This is like the Bible. It's a book of requirements, not a book of suggestions.
Right.
But if you don't even know what the requirements are, then it doesn't matter. So right now we're working with two representatives in our state to write a law at the state level for Texas that if your school district is continuously found non-compliant, then there's a sanction. There's an enforcement mechanism.
Ooh, I like that.
Last year, we sent out $900 billion from the U.S. Department of Education to states, not even a thumbs up if you got it, a thank you note, a gift card to Cracker Barrel. What? We just send it out. No wonder education and special education is amazing. Nobody is guarding the hen house. The federal government doesn't oversee states. States absolutely do not oversee districts, and districts don't oversee their campuses. So when I come in, the big mouth from the South, they didn't know what to do with me. And I don't have anything you can take. I'm a college dropout. I'm not a quitter, David. I've dropped out of a lot of colleges. I mean, you can take my Costco card, but I'm going to stand in the gap for these kiddos, right? And do what's right. And it's so exciting as we get to train little special education bosses everywhere, because there's 8.5 million children in America with an IEP. There are kids all over the globe that have an IEP. And so we're going to run this up the flagpole so that everybody that sits at the IEP table, parents, educators, and advocates, can navigate this process. And it is a process.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. I didn't realize it was that high. Obviously a number. And so that's just IEPs. And we haven't even talked about
504.
That's not 504.
Or kids that weren't identified because we ran you off. We were so lovely in the meeting, so we have two kinds of parents, right? We have parents like me. I would get another job if I needed to get James a tutor, and I did that. Or we have parents that don't understand their rights or have other challenges that when the school says no, they just go away. There's a lot of cultures that if you ever say no once, it's against their culture to disagree. I obviously did not grow up in that culture.
Right. Not your culture. Right?
Not my culture. Yeah.
Well, and schools don't always do a great job of providing an environment that allows that either, or encourages it, right? The feedback, like to our earlier point, it's kind of like, okay, this is what we see. This is what we say.
Yeah. I was in a meeting the other day with a lovely, lovely, warm and fuzzy attorney, a school district attorney in Connecticut. So since, March 13th, 2020, I've been living here at my computer with an Ethernet cord. So I go into all the world, right? Kodiak Islands, Miami-Dade County. And of course, they have a school district attorney for this college dropout. And I know why you have the attorney there. I don't care if you bring 100 people. I like a crowd. And I said, so your district said that you couldn't have social studies and science goals and self-contained in Connecticut because it's a state statute. So please provide me that statute by close of business and a prior written notice. And she goes, there won't be a prior written notice because that statute doesn't agree. It doesn't exist. These are people, this is leadership, right? So you can't even, unfortunately, sometimes believe what the leadership is saying to you. So,
So she was saying a statute didn't exist that you knew didn't exist.
Well, it doesn't exist. Yeah. So I'd asked the school previously, he's in a self-contained class.
Oh, I see. Right.
Hello, if you're in a self-contained class, you got to have those 5 areas of content, right? Reading, writing, math, science, and social studies. And they said, we don't do that. Connecticut, I love when they say our state doesn't say we have to do that. Is that a list? Like, here's what we don't got to do in Connecticut.
Right. I see, yeah.
Like if it sounds wrong, it is wrong. But because they stick to their position, wrong or right, it's hard for parents to tease that out. So, just talking about the straight numbers, 8.5 million children in America have an IEP. I don't know how many millions have been railroaded into this 504 racket. A 504 was a civil rights law. It was never meant to be used this, broad sweeping in public schools. So nationally, special ed is about 12.9%. Pediatricians would say it's really about 25% if we got all those kids with ADHD, got all those kids with neurological differences, if we picked up on dyslexia, I was watching a video yesterday and talking about using AI, and that if you're going to use AI, do not use it above 5th or 7th grade reading, because that kills most of your buyers, because the average adult doesn't read over 7th grade. So, I mean, there's just so many things going on that we just run past it. And, as it relates to special ed in schools, what we focus on, we fund. What we celebrate, we give finances to it. And I loved all those things, right? I love football and, the marching band and drill team and STEM, whatever, and the advanced dual certification. But not too many people grow up to play football or have on green smoky eyeshadow and are the drill team for a living, right? Maybe we should know how to read, and right. And so these kids that are, not identified, not served, sometimes what we do in school, because of the lack of training, handicaps them even more.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's such a focus on, I think a lot of times, kind of the traditional aspects of education, or like I said, particularly when you get to high school and those types of things, rather than the brass tacks of education and academics. Yeah. And that's something that you realize more as a parent, I think, as you experience it, rather than like when we were in high school, you're like, oh no, this is fun. Like you said, I love football games. I love, this prom is great. Right. But that is still, even at that time, not every student's experience.
Right. Yeah. We want, so many of the families that I serve, and I push the limits. It shouldn't be pushing the limits. December 2nd, IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, turned 50 years old, that was signed into law begrudgingly by Gerald Ford, December 2nd, 1975. And he said, this is going to be a lot of paperwork. That's literally what he said. Thanks.
Jeremy.
Yeah. And a lot of work on the school's part. Yeah. Humans are a lot of work. Right. And so when people say, the special ed kids, I said, I don't know what you're talking about. No, the special ed kids. No, they're just kids. And every child is a general ed student. Every child is a general ed student. Just some of them need special education services. And until we stop putting kids in silos, then we're still, and I wouldn't listen. I was that same biased, discriminatory person. I'd never had anybody that had a disability. I grew up, I played golf. We had the country club. We went to all the things. Mm-hmm. I did, I grew up like, if you got a problem, get it together and suck it up. Right. And this was a problem with James that I couldn't control or write a check for. And so it brought me to my knees and pivoted my life's work. And I'm so grateful for it now. But we don't have compassion for things we don't walk through, right? I used to think I'm never getting divorced. And then I married somebody, right? And until you walk through it, and I hope nobody has to walk through what you've walked through, or I hope it's on this level, but at some point you will be helping an individual with a disability, because you'll have a relative, right? And you'll begin to understand a little bit of how frustrating it is to get basic services and supports.
Well said. Yeah. Well said. You're right. And until you've walked in those shoes, it's like you said, it's not that we wish this on others, like, because it's hard. It's a challenge. It's gratifying. It's like you said, it forces you to grow as a person in ways you never expected to. I mean, there's all of that.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you can't use support, or that your child doesn't deserve support.
Right.
Just like others do. And I still think that there's more understanding. I think obviously probably from your perspective, must feel amazing to some levels to see the progress that has been made over the years, even knowing how far we still have to go.
Yeah. And I think the greatest thing out of the pandemic was this ability to peek over the fence, right? Mm-hmm. We saw teachers that, oh my God, walk on water. And we saw teachers that probably should have a different vocation. I had one of my clients, her son has cerebral palsy and has only partial use of one arm, but he's brilliant. He's visually impaired. He has a CTVI, cortical vision impairment. And at the beginning of the COVID, I call it the COVID, they had a big screen TV in her house, and the teacher said, Rusty, look, I painted the mane on the horse darker. Can you see that, Rusty? Rusty, look what the mom called me. And I said, just probably leave the kitchen where the knives are and just go for a drive. Like, we don't know. And this student is above grade level. He does homeschooling now. He's just graduated. He's brilliant, but because he's in a wheelchair and nonverbal, then he has to go straight to life skills. Said who?
Mm-hmm. Said who? Yeah.
And he is at the highest level on his communication system. He uses a communication system with switches. He can tell you exactly what he wants you to tell him, but you have to speak in his modality. He has an AAC, an augmentative alternative communication system. And there's a federal law that says everybody in the school that teaches him has to be able to communicate with the same efficacy in his communication modality that you do with other students, right? But we don't know that. If we had a kid in your class that had sign language, we wouldn't go, well, he'll just sign to himself. You would have an interpreter, right? So for kiddos nonverbal that use an augmentative system, there should be somebody that is a communication partner with them. And we get parents with kids with a communication device, a communication partner all the time. Why? I'm not going to expect the whole school and 7 teachers every year to learn his communication system. But parents don't even know that's available. So they're like, he doesn't use his device very much. That's because nobody else uses the device. Yeah, he doesn't use it. No. You know how you sit at the front and you teach this? You're mirroring it. So language is mirrored, right? Yeah, he doesn't use his device very much. Oh, so
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's also is extended. I'm assuming you're familiar with RPM and spelling to communicate, and
yes,
right.
Yes.
And so that's by extension, that's our world. But you nailed it, Karen. I mean, that's you would never say, like you said, someone who has to communicate through ASL, like, oh, sorry, we don't believe that you're capable. Like there's also this level of gatekeeping that goes up with non-speakers, and you alluded to earlier.
Yeah.
This again, going back to the presumption that they're not competent, and forcing them to show that that they're really authoring their thoughts.
And we make kiddos with they're nonverbal. There's 10 types of communicative intent, not just water, bathroom, duh, right? And so I have a client in New Jersey, and they wanted the typing to communicate. And she's like, we do not honor that. That is not researched, blah, 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 blah. What does it matter? And then
if it can communicate using it, that's what counts. Like
I'm giving you a video. Yeah, but in our district, we just don't. I mean, I'm so nice of you to come to school. So, and often kids that are nonverbal, we give them a higher level of cognitive demand. We've got PEC systems. That's so 1921. You don't see anybody outside with a flip board. Let's stop doing that, Muffin. I'm not saying, hey, David, go grab the yellow pages to look up Panera Bread. That would be ridiculous, right? We have the Assistive Technology Act of 1988, which is a federal act making it a requirement that assistive technology devices, services, and supports are bound and delivered to the family and the student for perpetuity. But nobody even knows about that.
No, right? I didn't know about that, as immersed as I am.
Yeah, and it says a communication device, whether developed, created, or acquired off the shelf. And as a shopper, I like that. So when they say, David, Stone can have this device, but we got to put in a purchase order, and then Bob has to approve it. No. Pull around your minivan. Let's head to Best Buy and get him a device. But they don't want that because it requires hands and work.
Exactly. Would you mind sending me that afterward? Like
absolutely.
That would be great, because I would love to dive into that a little bit more, because that's right up our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Well, let's get down to some brass tacks, and we've talked about some of the challenges, obviously, that parents face. Let's get them some solutions, because I know you're full of them in terms of I'm going to leave it full. Yeah. I knew I teed you up for that, being the comedian that you are. But what are some things that parents can really arm themselves with in terms of getting ready for not necessarily even their first IEP? Let's say they're revisiting it. What are some tools and tricks?
Yeah. So obviously our book is coming out next month. So please evaluate that, the Epic IEP. It's currently the #1 bestseller in inclusive education as a pre-launch on Amazon. So we're very excited about that. So this is 30 years of how the 7-part process that I use to serve families at the highest level. But the first thing you need to do is get out your IEP, print it out. If
Yeah.
you don't understand it, guess what? No one else does, right? And you're not allowed to go into an IEP meeting unless you have a list of questions. So the three things that I have when I go into an IEP meeting, so I would have Stone's last full and individualized evaluation. I would have Stone's last 36 instructional weeks of IEP progress,
Good.
a full draft copy of this IEP meeting. And without a full draft copy ahead of time, it's unlikely that I'll be able to make an informed decision and we'll have to reschedule. I don't go to my broker or my realtor and not be able to see something, right? And so
Right.
we have schools being taught to just shove a piece of paper across. David, could you and your wife sign? We'll see you next year. No. This is a document that the federal law says that the pillars of IDEA, it says the most important person crafting, curating, creating this document is the parent. The parent is the expert. The school is not the expert. They're amazing educators. Even if they're the best educator ever, they're going to have your baby for a short window of time. The parent is the expert. And so go into that meeting prepared with questions. And three things happen at the end of the meeting. We table, we agree, we disagree. They're all fine. We are not being rushed. We're not picking up your Starbucks and you're running to the airport. This is a child, and we will decide what makes him successful. What is a strength? Let's fan that. What is a need? Let's mitigate that. But it is a very intensive process to create an IEP. The federal law says that we are obligated to write an IEP to enable him to make progress appropriate in light of his circumstances. It doesn't say anything about his eligibility. So his circumstances are everything. What's going on at home? Did dad just get a new job? Did the last brother move out? All of these pieces are how we craft an IEP instead of just, here's a state test. He's well groomed because that's important. And he's going to take this his sophomore year. What? I should be able to pick up the IEP and go, oh, yep, there's James. I can see James in fourth grade. And most IEPs are just cut and paste, and it's the cycle, the same thing over again. If I can't pick up that document and see your child, then we have to start over. And so if we have to have 4 IEP meetings, I don't want to, but we have to get it right. Because if we don't get it right, we got it wrong for everybody, not just the child.
And the IEP really is kind of the map for your child in school, right? I think that, again, that's one of the things I learned later, too late in a way to really be effective, is like you said, and it's funny, that's exactly the experience that I had for so many years. Okay, IEP meeting, here's the paperwork, you go in, you sit down, there's everyone, here's the speech therapist who spends 20 minutes with your kid a week, with 3 other kids, and they consider that, and she's weighing in on your child's progress and all that. To your point though, you are the expert. I think I don't know why, and again, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I think sometimes it's easy to realize that.
Well, you know why you don't realize that is because at the meeting, they make it clear that they're inviting you to their place of work. We've got to go. We got to go. I mean, we're going to Satan football. So if you could just sign, we got to go. We have another meeting. Cindy has to leave. Can we release him? We act like they're bothering us, right? We act like often this meeting is a bother, which makes parents feel like their child is a bother. And so we have to change that, right? Parents with kids with disabilities, 85% of them get divorced. And so I'm so glad that I don't go to meetings in person anymore. I'd walk into a meeting with my client, everybody's chit-chatting. As soon as we walk in, dead silence. Well, that feels yummy. And nobody. We don't even call the parent ahead of time. Hey, what's going on with James? Anything? We just, okay, today is whatever day. We're going to read the norms. Do you all agree to act right? Of course, I've never raised my hand to that. I'm not going to act right. I'm allergic to that. All right, number 1, here's the present levels. Okay, well, hold on. Can we talk about these 17 pages of his IEP progress reports from last year? Well, I've already sent those to you. Yes, ma'am. Can we talk about them?
Can we talk about it?
Progress or lack of drives this year. What do you want to talk about? Oh, this is so warm and friendly, right? And if you're acting like that, that's what your feelings are very obvious instead of, I do lots of professional development. I have a professional development called Oh No, Karen's Coming, right? And schools get offended that parents bring an advocate. You wouldn't be offended if somebody brought somebody to the hospital or you got a realtor. Somebody wouldn't go, David, I can't believe your wife got a broker. What's wrong with y'all? You know why you get an advocate? Because this is not your wheelhouse. Even if you're the special education director, you being in a meeting with your child's IEP, that is not your wheelhouse, right? And so we should celebrate when parents get support because you're already outnumbered. It's already 7-1 or 5-2. You're already outnumbered. And so we should be grateful that there are advocates that support parents. But I was at a meeting last weekend, this lady said, the warm and fuzzy attorney, she goes, well, I heard your input, Miss Cunningham. She goes, but let's listen to the certified professionals. I said, well, that couldn't be more dismissive, what you just said. The certified professionals. Like, wow. Tell me how you really feel about the parents. And we've got to do better at that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know we're coming up against time, so I want to get our segments in. We've actually given a lot of other tips.
Yeah.
We've got a little jingle I'm going to play, Karen, that you'll appreciate. So let's go with our tip of the week jingle, Dave.
Hey, parents, gather around. It's time to speak. We're here with your tip of the week. Strategies and wisdom just for you. Autism parents, we know what you go through.
All right, it's time for another tip of the week. Bringing back the segment. And like I said, Karen, you've been full. Actually, you've been dripping these tips out throughout the segment, which is great. But is there anyone, and you gave me a tip of the week that I'm going to share based on what you just said, but I want you to go up first.
Yeah. So my tip of the week, autism tip of the week, is do you need to ask the committee, can you explain the characteristics of this child's autism? See, autism is a word. It's in the DSM-5 criteria, but autism is not a service. The eligibility opens the door for services, but could you explain to me the characteristics of my child's autism? And then it will be a very quiet room because autism is not a one and done. It's like how many colors of blue are there? And if you don't know the characteristics of my child's autism, then we need to reschedule and have another meeting because we write an IEP based on their circumstances. And we just hear the name autism or the name ADHD or the name dyslexia. And, oh, I know what that is. My cousin had that. My neighbor's brother has that. Really? They had it like it's a Volkswagen? No. And if you don't know the characteristics of autism, we shouldn't be writing a document to serve him.
Yeah, that's great. So my tip of the week, and again, based on your input, Karen, what you said is like, I think we need to change our mindset as parents going into these IEP meetings and realize that we are in the driver's seat. We are the ones who are the experts for our children.
Yeah.
Don't go in reactively, go in proactively, go in, with a plan. Again, you may not know exactly what that looks like, but you know that your goal is to see progress, to your point earlier.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Do you have a fact or fiction that you want to throw out there? If you do, we have a jingle, of course.
Okay. I'm ready.
Okay.
Get QuickTime ready, and here we go. This is Autism Fact or Fiction. We're breaking down what's real, what's rumor, and what might surprise you. Let's go.
Yeah. So autism fact or fiction, autism high functioning still might mean autism the most needs.
That's good. You want to elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yeah, I think that we are, I remember when James was little, he had autism, people would ask me really intelligent questions like, does he count coins? Yeah, we just take him in his pull up to Vegas and we have him count cards. No, that's a movie. That was a movie, Rain Man. Right. And so we say things like mild, moderate, severe, high functioning.
Yeah.
So nobody even knows what that means. He's really good at math. Oh, okay. Does he have receptive communication? Is he dressed, right? Is he keeping his clothes on, right? And there are things that we celebrate at school that may not serve your student.
That's excellent. Well, I know we're up against the time. Like I said, we could talk so much more. I'm so glad that you're doing what you're doing, Karen. I mean, I think, and for those, why don't you let viewers and listeners know how they can reach you, get the book, find out all the things. So the Epic IEP is coming out in a few days. Go get it. Come back to the epic-iep.com, put in your information, and you get $500 worth of free bonuses. You can find us anywhere. Our website, specialeducationacademy.com. We put out 52 pieces of content every day.
We have 1 million followers and about 9 million impressions a month, which is such a honor for this loudmouth college dropout using an Android. So what we want to do is serve you at the highest level, because our kids can win when they're seen, celebrated, and given an IEP with rigor, not to overwhelm them, but they can make progress. And so we are excited. We're doing a whole world book tour next year. I'm going on tour. So is Bon Jovi. I don't know if we're going to pair up, but we should. We certainly should.
I would go.
That would be a blast. But we want to help you, whether you're an educator, whether you're in the hospital system, the juvenile justice center, school districts. We train everybody, because there are not two sides of the table. There's one side of the table to serve this cherub who is RA, ridiculously amazing. And when we get it right for everybody, and we get it right a lot. So let's keep doing that.
Well, there's nothing more I can add to that. Thank you again, Karen. And for our viewers and listeners, thanks for joining us this week. We'll catch you again next week on the lighter side of the spectrum.